Welcome to another episode of the Green Lecture Series, part of the Green Lecture and Concert Series here at Archmere Academy. We're standing in the historic Patio, the former estate of John and Helena Raskob, where all of our lectures and concerts take place. Today we're going to be talking to Mr. Bill Church and Mr. Brant Duddy, who are experts at organ rebuilding. And our tour and conversation is going to be around this huge project of reconstructing the historic music room organ. The original organ was installed between 1916 and 18 when the home was built, and over the years dismantled and unfortunately left empty. And now we're going to be talking to them about how over the last several years we've received a gift of an historic organ and are reinstalling that in a multi-year project that has all been driven by volunteers and philanthropic-minded music enthusiasts. So please join with me as we begin our conversation with Bill and Brant and have a slight sampling of what the organ is going to sound like when it's completely finished. Hello and welcome to Archmere Academy and to this Green Series lecture entitled Remaking a Masterpiece, the Archmere Dresden Organ. This program is made possible by the Archmere Academy Organ Society and Friends of the Patio. And my name is Michael Marinelli. I'm the headmaster of Archmere. And it's a pleasure for me to welcome today two guests who are going to help me present this program about this unique instrument at Archmere. Bill Church, Mr. Bill Church is sitting to the left of me, and to the far left, Mr. Brant Duddy, both of whom have worked diligently over the last several years on this project. And I know that we have other people who've contributed many, many hours and much expertise to the project, in addition to a lot of sweat equity, resources, and other things that have made it an amazing project for Archmere Academy. So I want to thank everyone in advance and again for all their help in putting together an historic instrument that we have here. I thought we'd start with the story of how it all began, and that really was with Mr. Bill Church here, whom I first met at one of our first concert series as part of the Green Concerts here in the Patio, the historic Italian villa on the campus of Archmere, probably back in 2014, I believe.
That's
it was. Right. And Bill and I met through a friend of a friend. And after a concert, he asked me about the organ and asked me if it played. And I said, unfortunately not, but I did know that it was a Welte-Mignon organ from 1916 that Mr. and Mrs. Raskob had installed when the home was built. But over the years, it saw its demise, and that was the end of that. And unfortunately, it's not playable right now. And then Bill's second question was, well, would you like it to play? And I said, of course we would, but we simply don't have the resources, and it's not really a high priority project given all the other projects we have on the school campus. And so with that, Bill left, and about a month later, he gave me a call and said, I have an idea. And so maybe from that point on, Bill, you can explain that idea and how you introduced us to Mark and Carol Dresden and what followed.
Well, I blame all of this whole project on Mary Ellen Sharber, who is the friend of the friend. And she brought me here to a Green concert, and I had never been here before. And she showed me all the beautiful rooms and the way it's appointed, how it was built in the 1910s, really. And I was set on fire about putting this place back where it used to be with a big pipe organ. And that's why I told you, let me see what I can do. And that's when I was working volunteer over at the Atlantic City Boardwalk Hall project. And I was working with my friend Brant Duddy. And I'll never forget it. I was down on my knees hunting for screws amongst a shelf of every kind of screw you can imagine. That is the largest pipe organ in the world when it all plays. And I mentioned to Brant that I probably ought to try to make this a reality, to give Archmere Academy an organ. And he said, well, I think I might know where there is one. So, go check it out, Brant. And thank you. And here's Brant. He and I have been friends for years. And so one morning in my kitchen counter business, he and I sat down and sort of mapped out what this organ ought to be. And all of a sudden, he was hooked. He'd been here and seen it and going, oh, wow. We started off with an empty palette. There's a picture of me showing you the hole in the ceiling where the music would come from. And that's where it started. And here we are, years later, getting close to it. And so that is the story of how it has come. There's been a lot of setbacks and a lot of jump forwards, but a project of this size takes time to do it right, and that's what Mr. Duddy has set out to do. Yeah. He's the curator of this project, the brains behind it. I have only been there to provide assistance monetarily and some advice. I have some knowledge of pipe organs, but nothing like this man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fascinating to me because, as you said, Bill, you introduced me to the architecture of the pipe organ more than anyone, and I've learned so much from Brant over the last several years too, just going down into the organ chambers. You know, being an organist myself and having played organ for years, I never really realized what mammoth instruments these were and the mechanics behind them, the complexities behind them, until we visited the Dresden organ in the home of Mark and Carol Dresden. You and I went up after that conversation and said, I have an idea, let's go take a look at it. And it was in this large room that they specifically built for the organ.
That's right.
And they said basically they were getting up in age. They had resurrected or saved it from demolition from, it was a Philadelphia theater, is that correct?
That's
its
correct.
provenance? And did some work on it to bring it back to its usual glory in the 19-teens, I suppose, 1916. And I sat down and played it, and it was amazing to hear all the percussion instruments that were included in it and all the different sounds that it produced. But what amazed me more was when they gifted it to us through conversations that we had with them, and then you and a group of volunteers de-installed this thing. It was amazing because all we saw at this end were pipes and snare drums and bird whistles and all sorts of things coming into the basement of the patio in pieces, but clearly marked to be reassembled here. But you, as you said, what we thought would have been maybe an 18-month project turned into a several-year project because it required a reconstruction of quite a bit of the organ, the initial pieces of it. But then there have been many additions to the organ over the years. And through these ideas that you and Brant brought to the table in terms of what this instrument should be able to do.
Right. I wanted the instrument to be able to play both venues, theater and classical. And we have a console for each. Many classical organists dislike the theater console and really don't know how to play it, and vice versa. And so we can have here at the Patio the best of both genres. People that love to play the classical console and people that love to play the theater. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that we will have Peter Richard Conte here, and he's going to prefer, although he can play both, he's going to prefer that classical console with the doorknobs. Mm-hmm. And so that's been one of the things that has been a target of Brant and me, to be able for us to be able to present either situation to organists so that we can have the best of the best here to perform at the Patio. And Brant has made that possible.
So I know that you've, as you said, working with Dickinson Theater Organ Society and then coming to know this whole group of organ enthusiasts, organ builders, a whole community that exists out there that I was introduced to through you. Maybe Brant can share with how you got more engaged. How did you get hooked, as Bill said, on the project? What intrigued you about it, Brant?
Well, I grew up in a musical household where we had 3 pianos and a pipe organ in the home. So I was submerged in this from basically birth. My father was a classically trained musician, so I sang in the choirs and what have you. So this was just part of my lifeblood, as it were. I fell into the pipe organ side of things as a summer job back in 1947. And having a slight mechanical bent, let's put it this way, the bug bit. And I've been at it ever since. The big thing here, the instrument we have, I helped Mark move at 3 different locations while he owned it. And as Michael said, when it was time for him to want to leave his home, which he has subsequently done, by the way, and Bill asked, so it just came to pass. It was a fortunate thing to get the basic instrument. It started life in the Jumbo Theater in Philadelphia. And then Mark got it about 1960 or so, and he added significantly to it in his home. Now, where he had it compared to what we have to work with, it was in a chamber at floor level, and the sound could progress directly into you. We're dealing with a situation here where it's actually 14 feet below us, has to speak up through a tone chute to get into this room that we're sitting in. So in order to make sure we had enough power to actually make a musical instrument for this set of acoustics, we needed more. And so we went on a hunt and found some more Kimball equipment, pipes, chests-like, so that we have basically doubled the size of what Mark's instrument was in his home. And we still have the harp, all the percussions, and they will eventually get hooked to the theater console here. Kimball was an interesting company from the standpoint that they were building both types of instruments during the teens and 20s and 30s. The pipe organ as a theater instrument, basically, the last ones were manufactured about 1931. So, but the scaling, the pipes and what have you were all the same in either instrument. The big thing was the winding and the tremolos and the violence of the tremolos to give you that throb sound and sob sister stuff that we think of when we think of some of the movies. So in this particular case here, we will have a setting that you can flip from classic tremolos to theater tremolos. So either console, depending what you're playing, you can get that sound from it. The basic concept between the two, the draw knob console, just over my shoulder here, plays a sound at one pitch. The horseshoe console plays a sound at several pitches on either of the keyboards that are there. So it's a mix and match with kill. And so in picking and choosing what will work on the one console is not the same thing that's going to happen on the other one. So again, when the thing is finally up and running, we must listen and sort out what we wish to hear and blend all these different sounds. A pipe organ is a series of fixed instruments with different vowel sounds for each rank. Ooh, ah, ee sort of thing. And it's the same in speaking. We have the harmonics within our voices. And some people project better than others. I happen to be a poor projectionist. I just don't have it. So I can appreciate what is required for different settings. We do have some sounds playing at this point, albeit a bit feebly, because I'm going to have to hear the whole sonority before we can really judge what level we will do the actual voicing of the pipes. So it's really a gigantic puzzle from day one. You think of a pipe organ as a musical instrument. Actually, it's a machine, a big machine. And each pipe has 4 different actions that make it play. So, and in this case here, we have 1,800, so you have about 4,000 parts that have to work in order to play this thing. And they all must work. So we're in the sorting out now and adjusting phase. It's just plain patience. No other way to explain it, to make it happen.
There's been a lot of additions, Brant, that you've added with your team of volunteers. My understanding is the Dresden organ, when we brought it in, had 41 ranks with a little over 2,500 pipes. That was like the base?
No, the Dresden organ actually was 18 ranks.
Okay, so it was even smaller.
We're up to 32 in this room and 9 down by the fireplace.
Right, and we might want to explain too the organization of the organ here. When the first organ that was installed had an antiphonal chamber, an antiphonal organ.
Yes.
So that in this Italian palazzo, the organ at the time would have been, as you said, very much like almost like a family's sound system in their home. And it was a player organ, so it could play rolls, and you would have that on, and it would be sounding through the house. To accomplish that, they had an antiphonal chamber that, in addition to this sound chute, there's another location in the house adjacent to the fireplace in the main atrium that has sound.
Right.
And that has another organ in it, correct?
Yes, it does. It does now.
And that's a Skinner Cole instrument?
That's a tracker organ, yes.
So we have parts right now, my understanding, and correct me, from about 1888 to 1931?
Yes, that basic time frame. That's the earliest section, obviously. And that particular division, when it plays, will be playing on the horseshoe console here and separated right over the top of the manual there, that it can be played against itself as a 2-manual organ, as a small continuo, if you want string quartets or something of that sort. It's a soft, mellow sound. And its purpose in this instance is to help supplement. This sound will get out into the big room, but not fully effectively, obviously. So that's going to become the backup to reinforce what's here. Mm-hmm. So it's, again, until we hear all this, then we decide what volume levels we will project.
Yeah.
So it's complicated in its own way. It's simple, and yet it isn't.
And then layered on top of the complicated nature of the mechanics of the organ, maybe discuss too how it's been modernized to the point where the original console to the house organ that was installed in 1916 was fixed into that wall. These 2 consoles are portable, and we have Opus 2 software is what is the kind of the innards of these organs that makes the signal work to the mechanical piece from depressing the key.
Correct.
And so that's another innovation that allows us to move these consoles out into the main room if we want to do, which is our goal, is to have some concerts here in the house in the future.
This also, you mentioned the Welte actually had a role player on it. Well, with the Opus 2 system, this can be recorded too and played back a series of selections whatever you wish to hear.
Just it's
So
a digital
it's-
process, yeah.
Well, the mechanics of it are still air operated, but still using an electronic system to operate it as opposed to mechanical.
And then we also have a gift, and Bill, I think maybe you secured this too, an Ampico baby grand that is sitting in the breakfast room of the house. Maybe you could explain that mechanical
That's correct.
idea.
We have all of the parts we need. We just have to put the effort behind it to finish it off. This is between the Opus 2 expertise to turn that on and play it from the console, and it is already equipped to get everything but the electrical signal and some tubing work. That will give the organist the ability to accent some of what he's doing with piano work. There's another thing that we have added that Brant has told me I have to tone it down a little bit. I wanted a big fanfare trumpet on this organ. It is mounted in the tone chute directly behind us here. And he said, it's too loud. I said, I want it loud. Anyway, I haven't heard it, so we'll see.
Yeah, that is really exciting to see some of these interesting additions to the organ itself. And one of the things I learned through this process is that whole idea that you can modify an organ like this and build it out so that it becomes a unique sounding instrument.
Exactly.
And it makes sense to me now why I see why organists travel from place to play these historic organs. And there's a circuit basically that attracts them because they have such unique sounds, and as Brant was saying, the acoustics that the building brings also in some ways defines some of that sound or what that sound is capable of producing. So, you know, a trumpet stop that we just talked about, an antiphonal trumpet might be, you know, too blaring in one sense, but another environment might be perfectly fine. And so that ability to hear, as you were saying, sort of an ensemble of sound is really critical in putting together these instruments.
Brant and I will reach a compromise on the trumpet.
So tell me, how much of organ building is a matter of engineering and mechanics, and how much of it is a matter of artistic taste?
It's a mixture of both. Brant, he is the architect of all the artistry and really most of the mechanics of what goes on here. Brant is, I think, the most knowledgeable man on the whole eastern seaboard, maybe the country, about pipe organs. And he and I have been friends for years, and I greatly admire his expertise and his friendship.
Well, we've certainly been a great friend to the Archmere community, and I know just our conversations over the last few years, and in sharing with me what organs you've worked on, I would have to agree with you. I think it might be a national clientele, not just the Eastern Seaboard, because
That's right.
and I suppose the more you do this and the more you experience situations that you can borrow ideas from, the more it becomes an art in a way, that you bring this just depth of knowledge to it. But then also I'm grateful for all of the other volunteers who've been here working day in and day out to support the project.
Our wonderful workers, volunteers, and so forth. Brant is all volunteer. Fred over there is all volunteer. I'm helping Jim out with some of his finances, but they all have exhibited such a hard-nosed allegiance to this project, and I'm deeply thankful for all of that, especially to Brant.
Well, we're grateful to all of you because, again, this is this is a gift to the school. I mean, there's no way that we would have been able to support or underwrite this project without the enthusiasm and support of all of you, but also the organ societies around that have been supportive of this. Dickinson Theater Organ Society and others that have just come forward and just been very excited about what's going on here.
I'm real excited about it.
Yeah. What do you see as the biggest challenges? I know one of the things that we talked about, and we actually created a sort of a maintenance fund for the organ. What do you see as the biggest challenges in maintaining an instrument like this? I mean, we already know what's involved in putting it together, and if we see the organ workshop, which we will have a chance to see in this presentation, the thousands of parts and all the tools and the equipment that's required to just maintain this organ. And I should mention that the organ workshop is a gift to the school too, to be maintained, to support not only this historic organ, but the organ at Iris Brook, the other Bill Raskob mansion, as well as the Dickinson Theater organ.
That's right.
So there's a lot of practicality in having a place where parts can be repaired or recreated or whatever that might be. But how do you see the challenges of maintaining instruments like these?
Routine maintenance on this instrument should be relatively trouble-free for a good 20 years. Everything mechanical as far as leather and what have you has been replaced in it. And the operating mechanism under each pipe is a little diaphragm of leather. And all that has been replaced, renewed. So it's whatever the life expectancy on the leather will be, that's going to be a determining factor. What I have used is the best we can buy at the moment, and experience has shown this type of leather has given us up to 60 years of service with no trouble. So I think long after we're all out of here, this thing should still be playing well. This instrument is going to be one that's going to be used probably heavily in the teaching of the physics of it, how the air works within it, the pipes, the resonance, and so on. So again, as the school needs the use of the instrument, we're all on a learning curve here as to what this instrument will do when it finally gets pushed to perform. I don't know how else to explain it other than
That's excellent.
that's really
Yeah,
it.
you touched on something really important, Brant, and that is the educational component of the instrument that we hope to have available to our students, not only those involved with music and through organ lessons or accompaniment for concerts and other things like that the school community would take advantage of, but also the mechanics behind the organ, the physics of the organ, and even the electronics of the organ. So those students who are more mechanically minded and scientifically minded can certainly experience the application of those sciences in the arts with an instrument like this. So we're excited about the learning that can come from this for our students as well, which is a great point. And I would suppose that's one of the differences of what the purpose of the installation of the organ was when you think about the Raskobs in the 1916 to 18 when this home was built, and its purpose was, a lot of the main homes of that period had instruments like this in their home for entertainment and for enjoyment, and that's certainly what the Raskobs did. And my understanding was that first organ cost about $30,000. It was a significant outlay for Mr. Raskob, and he was very much enthusiastic about music, as was his wife, who graduated with a degree in music from the Lefson Hall Conservatory of Music in Philadelphia, and was a concert pianist and organist herself. And there are letters back and forth in our archive between the Welte-Mignon Organ Company with Mr. Raskob after this was installed about tuning and about other things that had to happen. I think there was actually a leak or an overflow of a bathtub above us that damaged some of the pipes. There was humidity issues because we're so close to the Delaware River. But additionally, he would write to them asking them for the newest rolls that could be played on the organ at the time. So that kind of musical enthusiasm that he had and the family had certainly is going to continue. And so I think the use of the instrument is going to be have multiple uses, both for performance but also for education here at the school. So that's wonderful. Perhaps we could maybe sample, or you could describe some of the sounds that we do have installed.
We have a few that you can hear.
I know that we don't have everything installed, and unfortunately the pandemic, like many other things, has interrupted a lot of our workflow, and we had hoped that we were going to have our concert series in this 2021 year, but it looks like we're going to have to push that into our 21-22 season with excited anticipation. But in the meantime, maybe we could sample a couple of sounds and you could explain them.
That I can do. I don't know if that expression's working or not. I don't want to listen to that necessarily, but anyway, this is safe. I've got to get after Buchanan to get more wiring for me. This is trying to play, but it doesn't.
Brant, you just demonstrated for us how you built sound so that we got increasingly grand as I was playing. And it began, I guess, with the great and the principal and the octave?
Actually, the softest sound at the moment is this little fella here, button on the choir.
In the choir. Yeah, very, very, very mellow sounding.
Now we have a little note that wants to play all by itself with this one, but this gives you the effect. Now the other side, can I walk? All right.
So now I'm playing on the choir.
Now hop up the top to be.
And this is the swell.
Play your melody on the great.
We haven't gotten to the pedal yet.
There's not much more.
Now I'm playing the great, and this is a principal, 8-foot principal. And the pedal. Trumpet.
But this
We're using couplers on to get the pedal sound.
that's about it.
So what we just demonstrated were all of the stops that are installed currently and that are voicing, and we built out all of the sound using the couplers across the top along with the individual stops in the different sections of the organ, the swell, the grate, the choir, and the pedal. I want to thank you for joining us for this presentation about the Archmere organ, the Dresden organ, and especially thank our guests today, Mr. Bill Church and Mr. Brant Duddy, who obviously, through their expertise, have created a phenomenal instrument that we'll be playing hopefully in the coming year. And hopefully, too, you'll be able to join us for one of our concerts with some very exciting guest artists that will really showcase what these instruments can do. They'll be fully voiced by that time. They'll be in tune by that time. But in the meantime, thank you and thanks for joining us.